Kenley Titan's farewell. Thank you for your service. The early morning air was crisp as Officer Mark Reynolds stood by his patrol car, adjusting his gear. His partner, Titan, sat beside him, alert as ever. The Belgian Malinois had been at his side for 4 years. 4 years of relentless training, late-night patrols, and life-threatening situations. To the rest of the world, Titan was just a K9 police dog, but to Mark, he was much more than that. He was a friend, a protector, and a brother in arms. Mark glanced down at Titan, giving him a firm pat on the head. "Another long shift ahead, buddy," he murmured, slipping a treat from his pocket. Titan's ears perked up, his dark brown eyes, watching Mark with unwavering loyalty. Their day began the way it always did, routine checks, patrolling the city streets, and keeping an eye out for trouble. Titan was more than just a tracker. He was a force of nature. Whether it was sniffing out narcotics, chasing down suspects, or standing guard at crime scenes, he performed his duty with unmatched precision. At the precinct, the officers respected Titan as one of their own. He had earned his reputation through years of service, proving time and again that he was more than just a dog in uniform. "Morning, Reynolds," Officer Davis greeted as he walked past. He crouched down to ruffle Titan's fur. "How's the real hero of this department doing today?" Mark smirked, watching Titan wag his tail briefly before regaining his composure. "Same as always, ready for whatever comes our way." Training sessions were a daily ritual. Mark and Titan worked in perfect sync, moving through obstacle courses, practicing suspect apprehensions, and refining Titan's ability to detect hidden substances. Trust was everything. Mark knew that in the field, there would be moments where he would have to rely solely on Titan's instincts, where his partner's judgment could mean the difference between life and death. But it wasn't all work. After long shifts, there were quiet moments, sitting outside the station as the sun set, Titan resting at Mark's feet. At home, Titan wasn't just a police dog, he was family. His bed was right next to Mark's, and more often than not, he would curl up on the floor beside the couch while Mark watched old detective movies. "Some days I think you understand me better than anyone," Mark had said one evening, absent-mindedly running his fingers through Titan's fur. The dog had simply nudged his hand in response, his presence offering a silent kind of comfort. Titan had seen Mark at his best and his worst. He had been there when Mark lost his partner in a shootout, had stayed by his side through the nightmares that followed. He had been there when Mark's father passed away, resting his head on Mark's lap as he sat in silence for hours. Their bond was unshakable. In a job where every shift could be their last, where danger was always a heartbeat, away Titan was the one constant in Mark's life. They had faced life-threatening situations together, had walked into the unknown side by side, and deep down Mark knew, if the time ever came, Titan would give his life for him without hesitation. As the evening sky turned to dusk, Mark clipped the leash onto Titan's harness. The radio crackled in his patrol car, a dispatcher's voice. "Breaking the quiet. All units, we have a situation. Armed suspect barricaded in a residence. Possible hostage involved. SWAT is being deployed." Mark exhaled, his grip tightening around the leash. Titan stood beside him, ears pricked forward, muscles tense. He could sense it. Something serious was coming. Mark looked down at his partner one last time before stepping into the cruiser. "Looks like we've got work to do, Titan." The dog didn't move. He didn't flinch. Because Titan was ready. He was always ready. The night was still. The city wrapped in an eerie silence as Officer Mark Reynolds sat in his patrol car, Titan resting in the back seat. The occasional crackle of the radio and the hum of streetlights were the only sounds, breaking the quiet. After years on the force, Mark had learned that nights like this, calm, uneventful, never lasted. Then the radio came alive. "All units be advised, armed suspect barricaded inside a residence, possible hostage situation. SWAT and K9 units requested for immediate deployment." Mark's pulse quickened. He glanced in the rearview mirror, meeting Titan's steady gaze. The dog was already alert, ears pricked forward, muscles tensed. He could sense the shift in the air. Mark picked up the radio. "Unit 12 responding. Endy. Route with K9. Flipping on the sirens, he hit the gas. The streets blurred past as he sped toward the location, a small, run-down house on the outskirts of town. Dispatch had briefed them on the way. The suspect was a known felon, armed and dangerous. A woman was trapped inside, possibly a hostage, possibly worse. Mark had been in standoffs before. He had seen how these situations could spiral out of control in an instant, but this time was different. This time Titan was with him, and that meant he had a partner who would follow him into the fire without hesitation. As he arrived, flashing red and blue lights illuminated the scene. The house sat at the end of a narrow street, its front yard littered with old furniture and broken-down cars. SWAT officers were already positioned, rifles aimed at the darkened windows. Lieutenant Harris approached. "Reynolds, we've got a confirmed visual on the suspect. He's inside with a woman. We believe she's still alive, but he's not responding to negotiators." Mark nodded. "What's the plan?" "The front door's reinforced, and we don't want to risk hostages getting caught in crossfire. We need Titan to help clear the house once we breach." Mark glanced down at his partner. Titan's body was taut with anticipation, waiting for the command. "Think you're up for it, buddy," Mark murmured. Titan gave a sharp, eager bark in response. Minutes passed like hours. The negotiator tried again, his voice calm but firm. "We don't want anyone to get hurt. Come out with your hands up." Silence. Then gunfire. A single deafening shot echoed through the night. "Shots fired! Shots fired!" someone yelled. The SWAT team snapped into action. Officers moved swiftly, positioning themselves along the entry points. The order was given. Go. The battering ram slammed into the door. Splinters flew as it burst open. Mark and Titan were already moving. The air inside was thick, the scent of sweat and gunpowder hanging in the darkness. Shadows flickered as officers secured the first room. "Clear," one officer called. Then a scream. A woman's voice, muffled, terrified. Mark's stomach clenched. Titan was their best chance of finding her before it was too late. He unclipped the leash. "Titan, search!" The dog lunged forward, nose to the ground, moving with the precision of a predator hunting its prey. Mark followed, weapon raised, heart pounding. Down the hallway, Titan froze, ears erect. His body stiffened, tail straight. He had found something. Then a sound, furniture scraping against the floor. The suspect was moving. Mark barely had time to react before the door at the end of the hall slammed shut. The suspect was barricading himself inside. Titan growled, low and menacing. Mark moved to his side, pressing his back to the wall. He could hear the woman sobbing. "Police!" Mark shouted. "Come out now!" A pause. Then the chilling sound of a shotgun being racked. The hostage gasped. "Please, please don't!" Mark's grip tightened on his gun. He looked at Titan. This was it. The next few moments would decide everything. The tension inside the house was suffocating. Officer Mark. Reynolds could hear the hostage's muffled cries through the barricaded door. His grip on his weapon was firm, but his heartbeat pounded in his ears. Every second that passed was a second too long. The suspect had stopped responding. No demands, no threats, just silence, and silence was dangerous. Mark exchanged a glance with Lieutenant Harris. "We need eyes inside," the lieutenant said. Mark's stomach twisted. He knew what that meant. Titan. His hand instinctively went to his partner's harness, feeling the sturdy material beneath his fingertips. Titan sat at his side, muscles tensed, amber eyes locked on the door ahead. He was waiting, ready. Mark crouched down, pressing his forehead briefly against Titan's. "You got this, buddy. Find him. Come back to me." Titan's ears twitched. No hesitation, no fear, just understanding. Mark took a deep breath, then gave the command. "Titan, search." Like a bullet, Titan sprang forward, slipping through the narrow gap in the splintered door. The room beyond was dimly lit, shadows stretching along the walls. Mark followed close behind, keeping his gun raised as his eyes adjusted to the gloom. Don the key. Living room was empty, but Titan didn't stop. His nose was low, scanning the floor, leading them through the house like an unseen force was pulling him forward. Then he stopped. At the base of the hallway, just past the kitchen, there was a door. Old, wooden, slightly ajar. A set of stairs led down into darkness. The basement. Mark's pulse spiked. He knew what basements meant. No exits, no way out. If the suspect was hiding down there, it meant one of two things. He planned to make a last stand, or he had nothing to lose. Titan let out a low, guttural growl. His signal. "He's down there," Mark whispered to the team. Lieutenant Harris motioned for two officers to move into position. "We go in slow," he ordered. "Controlled. Titan leads." Mark swallowed hard, forcing himself to steady his breathing. He gave Titan a silent signal, and the dog crept forward, descending into the darkness. The wooden stairs groaned under the weight of their steps. The basement smelled damp, mold, dust, something metallic. The air was heavy, thick, with the scent of unwashed clothes and something else. Something Mark recognized instantly. Gunpowder. Titan moved like a ghost, his body low, eyes glowing in the dim light. Then he stopped, a single breath, sharp and quick. He had found him. Before Mark could react, the world exploded. Gunfire. A deafening blast echoed through the basement. Wood splintered, dust filled the air, and chaos erupted in an instant. "Shots fired! Shots fired!" a voice yelled. Mark's vision blurred, but his body moved on instinct. He dove to the side, heart hammering as adrenaline surged through his veins. Then Titan's bark, a fierce, unrelenting snarl. Mark's focus snapped back. Through the dust, he saw Titan launch himself at the suspect, jaws clamping down on the man's arm. A scream tore through the air as the gun clattered to the floor. Titan had him. Officers swarmed in, shouting commands. The suspect thrashed, trying to break free, but Titan held firm. Mark forced himself up, aiming his weapon. "Don't move!" The suspect's wild eyes flickered between Titan and the officers. His free hand moved toward his belt. A knife. Mark barely had time to process what happened next. The suspect swung the blade. Titan didn't let go. Even as the blade tore into his side, even as his body jolted with pain, Titan held on. His jaws tightened, refusing to release his grip. He wasn't just fighting. He was protecting. Protecting Mark. Protecting the officers. A single gunshot rang out. The suspect collapsed. The room fell into silence, and then Titan wavered. Mark's stomach dropped. "Titan!" The dog stumbled, legs trembling, breath ragged. Mark was at his side in an instant, hands pressing against Titan's wound. "Stay with me, buddy," he whispered, voice breaking. "Just hold on." Titan's eyes met his, loyal, unwavering. Faint whimper, a slow blink. Then the light in his eyes dimmed. Mark barely registered the gunshot that ended the fight. The suspect collapsed, the weapon slipping from his grasp, the basement falling into an eerie, suffocating silence. But Mark's world had already narrowed to the figure in front of him. Titan. The dog wavered on unsteady legs, his body heaving with every labored breath. A crimson stain spread across his fur, darkening the golden-brown coat Mark had run his fingers through 1,000 times before. "No. No, no, no." Mark dropped to his knees, catching Titan just as his legs gave out. The dog slumped into his handler's arms, his weight heavy and limp. Mark's hands pressed desperately against the wound, feeling the warmth of Titan's blood seep through his fingers. "Stay with me, buddy. Just hold on." Titan's ears twitched at the sound of Mark's voice, but his breathing was uneven, shallow. His once bright eyes, always so full of life, now flickered as if struggling to stay open. "Medics! We need medics now!" Mark shouted, his voice raw. The other officers moved around him, securing the scene, but Mark barely noticed. Someone radioed for an ambulance. Someone else crouched beside him, a hand on his shoulder. Lieutenant Harris. "We got him," Harris said quietly. "It's over." But it wasn't over, not for Mark. He cradled Titan closer, his free hand stroking the dog's head, his touch trembling. "You did good, Titan. You were amazing." His voice broke. "You're my hero." Titan let out a low, shuddering breath, his body trembling against Mark's chest. His tail gave the faintest wag as if to say, "I know." Mark squeezed his eyes shut, his throat burning. He wasn't ready. He would never be ready. "Titan, please." His voice was barely a whisper now. The sirens outside were getting closer. The medics would be here any second. But as Titan's body relaxed in his arms, as his breathing slowed, Mark knew it wasn't going to be in time. Titan blinked up at him one last time, his gaze full of trust, of love. Then with one final exhale, the light in his eyes faded. The world around Mark collapsed. A choked sob escaped his lips as he held Titan tighter, pressing his forehead against the dog's, his partner, his best friend, his family. The basement was silent, save for the quiet sniffles of officers around him. Some looked away, unable to watch. Others stood still, heads bowed in silent respect. A hero had fallen. Mark wasn't sure how long he stayed there, holding Titan, whispering reassurances even after there was no one left to hear them. "You were the best partner I could have ever asked for." And then, softly, brokenly, "Rest easy, buddy, I've got it from here." The night air was heavy with grief. The flashing red and blue lights cast long flickering shadows on the pavement outside the house, where Titan had drawn his last breath. Officer Mark Reynolds sat motionless beside his fallen partner, his uniform stained with blood, Titan's blood. The paramedics had arrived, but there was nothing they could do. Titan was gone. A somber hush had fallen over the officers who had responded to the call. Some stood in silent mourning, others clenched their jaws, fighting against the emotions threatening to break through. Even the hostage, a woman who had been moments away from death, stood nearby, hands trembling as she wiped away silent tears. She approached slowly, hesitant, as if afraid to intrude. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "He saved my life." Mark lifted his head, meeting her tear-filled gaze. He swallowed the lump in his throat, nodding. "He saved all of us." A few feet away, Lieutenant Harris gave a quiet order. "We bring him home with honor." Two officers unfolded an American flag, laying it gently over Titan's lifeless body. Mark felt his chest tighten as they handled his partner, with the same reverence reserved for fallen soldiers. Because that's what Titan was, a soldier, a warrior, a hero. The officers formed two lines as Titan was carried from the scene, their hands raised in salute. Mark walked alongside them, his movements slow as if the weight of the moment was pressing down on him. His hand never left Titan's body. He owed him that much. The day of Titan's funeral arrived too soon. The skies were grey, as if the heavens themselves were mourning. The police department had arranged a full honours service, the kind given to officers who had made the ultimate sacrifice. Mark stood at the front of the gathering, dressed in full uniform, the weight of his grief settling heavily on his shoulders. In front of him, a small casket lay draped in the same flag that had covered Titan the night he fell. On top of it, placed with care, was his police badge, the very symbol of his service. Rows of officers stood at attention, their expressions solemn. Canine handlers from neighboring precincts had brought their own partners, the dogs sitting obediently beside them, their usually alert eyes clouded with an unspoken understanding. They had lost one of their own. A police chaplain stepped forward, his voice steady yet laced with sorrow. Titan was not just a K9, he was an officer, a protector, a partner. He served with unwavering loyalty, and in his final moments he did what he had always done. He put others before himself. Mark's throat tightened. He wanted to say something, to tell them who Titan really was, not just a police dog, but his best friend. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he stepped forward and placed his hand on the casket. The cold metal badge beneath his fingers sent a shiver up his spine. He closed his eyes, whispering the words he had said on that terrible night. "You were the best partner I could have ever asked for." Then came the moment every officer dreaded. A dispatcher's voice crackled through the speakers, steady but filled with emotion. "All units, stand by for the final call." The silence was deafening. Every officer stood still, Breaths held as the final tribute was given. K9 Titan badge number 627. This is your last call. After years of dedicated service, you have completed your mission. Rest easy, hero. We will take it from here. The radio went silent. And then, the sound of bagpipes filled the air. Mark didn't move. Couldn't move. Because, in that moment, it became real. Titan was gone. But his legacy would never fade. The world didn't stop after Titan was gone. The sun still rose, the calls still came in, and the streets still needed protecting. But for Officer Mark Reynolds, everything felt different, quieter, emptier. Titan's absence was a wound that refused to heal. Mark still reached for the leash in the mornings, expecting to see Titan waiting by the door, tail wagging in anticipation of another day on duty. He still found himself looking toward the back seat of his patrol car, where Titan had always sat. Fears perked, ready for action. The silence left behind was deafening. At the precinct, Titan's name was spoken in hushed tones, officers still reeling from the loss. His kennel remained untouched. His badge hung in a display case in the front lobby, a permanent reminder of the partner who had given everything. But Mark knew Titan deserved more than a plaque on a wall. He deserved to be remembered. 2 months, sir. After Titan's passing, the department held a special ceremony. Officers, K9 handlers, and their partners from across the state gathered in the precinct's courtyard. A new sign was unveiled, bold letters etched in steel. The Titan K9 Training Academy, honoring service, loyalty, and sacrifice. It was a permanent tribute to the dog who had given his life to protect others. Mark stood at the podium, his uniform crisp, but his voice thick with emotion. Titan wasn't just a K9 officer. He was my partner, my family. He taught me more about loyalty, bravery, and selflessness than I ever thought possible. And now his legacy will live on through the next generation of K9 teams. The Academy would train future K9 units, ensuring they had the same dedication, the same courage, the same heart that Titan had displayed every day. New recruits stood in the crowd, their eyes filled with determination. They had heard the story of Titan, the partner who never hesitated, never backed down, and now they carried his spirit forward. Mark still visited Titan's grave, a simple stone that bore his name, badge number, and the words "loyal until the end." Some days he sat in silence. Other days he spoke, telling Titan about his new partner, about the rookies who trained under his name, about the cases that still kept him up at night. And though Titan was gone, Mark could still feel him. The rustling of the wind, in the distant bark of a K9 in training. In the moments of hesitation, where Mark heard a familiar breath at his side, as if Titan was still watching over him. Titan had given everything for his duty, and now his legacy would live on, not just in the academy, not just in the officers he had saved, but in the unbreakable bond between every handler and their K9 partner. Because loyalty never dies, and neither do heroes.